What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome to today's video. Now, originally it was going to be a Madden gameplay video. The audio is all messed up, so I had to push that video back a couple days. So I was like, well, what can I put out? You know, C4 with the daily content. I was like, well, why not start to jump in to the 2019 draft content? This is when we started last year. It's not going to be heavy. It'll be maybe a video or two a week, maybe even less than that, of just our positional rankings. I mean, last year we did this, and you guys really liked the video. It helps you guys because we're at about the halfway point of the college football season, so we're starting to get a good idea of what players are going to project well for the upcoming draft, what players are actually going to declare for the draft. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 quarterbacks. There's still a couple guys that might decide to return to school, which can make the list a little bit different, but that's why we do it early, so we have some opinions. We start getting some names out there, because I know there's a lot of guys out there that need a brand new franchise quarterback. There's some people that have aging quarterbacks that need to add some depth. So that is what we're going to try to do here today and break down my early 1.0 rankings for the top 10 quarterbacks for the 2019 NFL draft. So we do have some honorable mentions, some guys that because this list, I mean, we're only halfway through the college football season, it could still shuffle around a little bit. I have four guys that are just on the outside looking in. First up, Mackenzie Milton UCF, undefeated national champions of 2018. Yeah, I mean, he's undersized. He's 5'11", 185, but he does have a lot of traits that you could easily make a comparison between him and Russell Wilson. I don't think I would definitely make that, but Mackenzie Milton is a guy that if he can make it in the NFL, if he can make a roster, I expect him to hold down a job for quite some time. He could be that guy that's 5'11", gets passed over by a lot of teams, but the arm talent is not terrible. The athletic ability, he's one of the better athletes at the quarterback spot. So, well, you know, it's pretty much easy to look at him and write him off and say, well, yeah, he could be a quarterback in the CFL. He's a guy I'm definitely keeping an eye on if he does decide to declare this year as a potential sleeper candidate for a depth role and might be able to develop. I've been kind of thinking, you know, maybe look at how the New Orleans Saints use Taysom Hill. And then, you know, different types of athletes for sure. But a quarterback like that, a quarterback that can fill a lot of roles, maybe that could be Mackenzie Milton. Next up, we have Brian Lewerke from Michigan State. Just a little too inconsistent for me. There's a lot of players in this draft class that I've rated that I just see them as safe. You know, I like more so when I talk about quarterbacks, talk about guys with really, really high ceilings, high upsides. I think this is the draft class that you're going to get your game managers. This is going to be a good draft class to get established backups that could develop into starters. But, you know, it's not a strong draft class by any means for the quarterback spot. And as of right now, I kind of have Brian Lewerke as an outside looking in of that safe QB mold. We have Jake Bentley from South Carolina, a little bit higher upside than some of these players, but he's far too inconsistent for me to currently rank him, considering all the weapons he does have there at South Carolina. Brian Edwards at wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, one of the best wide receivers in college. I feel like his production should be a little bit better. And lastly, we have Nick Fitzgerald from Mississippi State. Good QB size, but I think more so he's going to be looked upon as a runner. He doesn't have the pocket presence. He's one of those guys that would rather take off and run with the ball than he would stay locked on and look downfield. Doesn't help that Mississippi State doesn't have the greatest wide receiving core, so he's definitely a guy that, you know, the more and more I do continue to watch him, he could creep himself back onto the top 10 given his size. But for right now, he's on the outside looking in. So jumping into the top 10, at number 10, we have Shea Patterson, 6'2", 215-pound quarterback from Michigan. So far this season, he has 1,300 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 100 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, he is the transfer from Ole Miss, kind of the mass exodus from Ole Miss, and he went to Michigan for Harbaugh. I thought he was going to be better, to be completely honest with you. I thought Jim Harbaugh, finally, this guy that, you know, has a quarterback background, finally has a talented quarterback. And, you know, I've been a little bit underwhelmed. I've been whelmed with Shea Patterson. He's made some wild plays, has also looked really, really bad at certain times. And I actually thought there was at one point this season that Dylan McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's brother that's there, was going to take over the starting gig. He looked a little bit better. I've only watched 2 or 3 Michigan games in their entirety, and I've not seen many wild plays. The best play I've seen Shea Patterson make, I think, was like a 67-yard rushing touchdown. And that wasn't with his arm. Plus the fact that he's a little bit undersized given the comparison to some of the other quarterbacks we're going to talk about in this class. As of right now, not only first and foremost is he a prime candidate to return to school, just because he only has 1 year in Michigan. Maybe he knows this. Maybe he knows he wants to go have another year, maybe under Harbaugh, another year of development, and have a shot at being that in a first round, you know, range, which I think he does have the talent. But as of what I've seen right now, have him at number 10. And I would have to hesitate to guess if I had to put a round on him. I'd say 5th, 6th, somewhere in that range. Going to number 9, it's going to be Daniel Jones, 6'5", 215-pound quarterback out of Duke. This year, he's had battled with some injuries, but when he's been in there, 800 passing yards, 8 touchdowns to 2 picks. Also has 45 rushing yards and a touchdown. Now, this is a quarterback that is an absolute sleeper, and not enough people are talking about him. He has the prototypical NFL size, underrated athlete. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, say, run, top 5 in the 40-yard dash. Good arm talent, and with everything being considered with the lack of offensive weapons at Duke, he's been really, really impressive, man. I've seen him play. I'm not going to act like, oh, yeah, I've seen 13 Daniel Jones games. I've probably seen 4 or 5, and I watched a lot of his tape this last offseason when I was kind of like, this guy might be something. This guy could be a sleeper. And what I've seen so far is a guy that has a lot of upside. I think right now, again, kind of like Shea Patterson, I think he'll be in that 5-6 round kind of range. But he's a guy that can develop. You can put him as a backup, and maybe someday he could become a starter. I don't think he's obviously a day one starter right now. I think there's one quarterback in this entire draft class that can be, that Josh Rosen, that Baker Mayfield role, where I think they could start right away, right out of college, fresh out the box with that fresh new quarterback smell. But I think a guy like Daniel Jones, you get him on there behind, maybe Phillip Rivers, maybe, a quarterback that might only have 2 or 3 years left to go. I think that's where Daniel Jones' value will be because he has all the intangibles to be a nice-looking quarterback at the next level. Go to number 8. We have Clayton Thorson. 6'4", 225-pound quarterback out of Northwestern. So far this season, he has 1,700 passing yards, 9 touchdowns to 7 picks, 28 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. You look at Thorson, again, kind of falls in the mold of you should be putting up better numbers. This was your big chance. This was your opportunity to put yourself in that first-round quarterback conversation. And he's kind of, he's underwhelmed for sure. He has the size, he has the traits, he has the arm talent, but the production hasn't been there. I haven't seen a guy that, when you're Northwestern, you're a team that's Northwestern's like the epitome of an average team that never gets blown out. I feel like Northwestern's all right, Northwestern's going up against Alabama. They won't lose 70-0. It'll be they'll lose 35 to 15, 16. They'll get a safety somehow, but they won't look completely terrible. And I feel like when that's your team and you have a guy that's in that conversation to be a first-round quarterback, he should be able to elevate you to more wins than what Thorson's been able to bring to them. So, and I've always been a little bit underwhelmed with this tape. People for the last really 2 years have talked about it as a potential first-round quarterback. I've always seen a guy maybe second, third round, and given how well he's performed so far through 7 games this season, I can't put him much higher than number 8. But we still could reevaluate if he finishes really, really strong. He might be able to get himself into that second, third round consideration where I originally had him, but right now I have him as a 4 or 5 round pick. Going to number 7, it's going to be Easton Stick, 6'2", 220 pounds out of North Dakota State. The last quarterback selected by North Dakota State was pretty much playing like the MVP last year in the NFL, Carson Wentz. Now, Easton Stick is not the same type of player as Carson Wentz, but the production is there and the talent is there. Now, so far this season, 975 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to 1 pick. Also has 200 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. He's a really, really good athlete. He's a guy that, but looking at those stats, he's a scrambler with 7 touchdowns. No much more than Carson Wentz. He's a guy that, if you're in the red zone, a play breaks down, he can make him scramble with his feet. I actually think he's one of the most slept-on prospects in the nation. You would say, oh, yeah, of course, the Philadelphia Eagle fan, the Carson Wentz fan, is going to be pumping up the North Dakota State player. But he's really, really good, and I firmly believe he will go in that 3 to 4 range, maybe 3 to 5. But I think that if he can get to the Senior Bowl, if he can get to throwing at the combine, that's when he's going to start wowing a lot of people, and his draft stock could improve. I think out of all the players right now from 7 all the way up to 1, I think realistically of all of them, Easton Stick from the Senior Bowl, being able to show that he can, the level in competition is not that big of a jump, very much like what Carson Wentz did. I think he might have the most to gain during this offseason process in terms of growing his draft stock, if you will. So definitely keep an eye out on Easton Stick from North Dakota State. Number 6, we have Jarrett Stidham, 6'3", 215-pound quarterback from Auburn. Now, I originally had Stidham in the first round, and he, my biggest knock on him was he was a game manager. Everything that I saw, he made some good throws. He's a smart football player, but like maybe he's a game manager, and it's kind of weird saying that from a quarterback that originally was at Baylor, where they're an A-rated type offense. So, saying Jarrett Stidham so far this year, 1,500 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 picks. He has currently negative 24 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. This was a big year for Auburn. This was the year that Auburn thought they could contend for a national championship, and Stidham has looked absolutely shook. It was an opportunity for Stidham because there kind of was a little bit of a logjam for who is the best quarterback in this upcoming draft class. There was an opportunity. If Stidham put some good tape out there, was able to carry Auburn to some big wins, he could be the unanimous selection as the first best, top, greatest of all time quarterback for the 2019 draft class. And I haven't seen it. All I've seen is him regress as a passer, lose a lot of confidence, and just look like a poor man's Alex Smith at the college football level. And that is not going to cut it. Now, you could say maybe Auburn's offense is struggling a bit. I mean, they have really good players there. They have, what do you call it? What's his name? Darius Slayton? Is that his name? One of the best wide receivers in college. I can't remember his name. Right? Yeah, Darius Slayton. There you go. Darius Slayton. Baller. God, that should be a lethal combination. Not there. They're not really stretching the field. I don't know if it's been an injury issue or not, but everything I've seen from Jarrett Stidham so far this year has said you had this opportunity to just double, triple, quadruple your draft stock, and you've done nothing but squander that opportunity. So as of right now, unless Auburn wins out the rest of the year and Stidham starts throwing 3-4 touchdowns a game and starts showing me more pocket presence, more confidence in his arm to actually push the ball downfield, I have to have him here at number 6. Go number 5, we have Will Grier, 6'1", 225-pound quarterback out of West Virginia, formerly of the Florida Gators. So far this season, he has 1,900 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and 7 picks. I would be a little bit salty about Will Grier, but I mean, bygones have been bygones. You know what happened? He was on Florida, took some steroids, ended up getting tested, popped, and kicked out of school, went to West Virginia. He's been balling out. He's definitely one of those names that's in Heisman contention. I mean, it's a QB-friendly scheme. Dana Holgorsen down there in West Virginia, they're going to throw the ball a lot. They have some great weapons, Gary Jennings, David Sills. I feel like I'm missing another wide receiver that they have down there. But he has plenty of weapons, but still, you can see he has maybe some of the worst mechanics in the draft. The talent is there. I think Will Grier is absolutely a guy that a lot of people either think he's going to be a god, a first-round pick, or you're just completely writing him off as a QB prospect. I think he's going to fall somewhere in the mid-range, and a team is, again, we keep talking about maybe someone like Los Angeles Chargers that have Phillip Rivers, who doesn't really show any signs of slowing down, but clearly you need to start preparing for life beyond him. I think a guy like Will Grier could be just a perfect fit down there, or maybe New Orleans if Teddy Bridgewater doesn't work out. Put someone there behind Drew Brees. I think Will Grier is another one of those guys that I don't see right now, given where his mechanics are at, an NFL caliber starting quarterback, but I definitely see him being a guy that if he can get a right QB coach, if he can get all his mechanics straightened up, the potential is there. The arm talent is there. It's just the mechanics, just the refined aspects of becoming NFL quarterback, making that jump from college to the pros, that I kind of see Will Grier. I think he'll struggle with that, especially if he gets selected in the first 2 rounds. I kind of have him as a second, third round pick because of the upside, because of production. And he's an underrated athlete, man. He's a guy that, kind of could play. I'm trying to think, what's a good comparison? Maybe like a Ryan Tannehill, guy that no one really thinks is a scrambler, but if you really want to, he could probably run off for a little bit. Because I remember he played at Florida, he had a couple 40, 50-yard runs, it felt like every other week. So for now, Will Grier, we're now entering the top 5, but I still think as of right now, the mechanics are really, really bad, but he has great upside to eventually come in as a backup and be a future starter in the NFL. Going to number 4, it's a name that we're not sure if he's going to declare yet, but I have been really, really impressed, and he is every bit of what I thought Paxton Lynch was when he was coming out of Memphis, where you got to gamble on it. You got to gamble on it, and if you can get a good QB mind in there, it might be able to tap into a franchise monster. Or if we saw with Paxton Lynch going in there, pretty much no help whatsoever, and some of it definitely fell onto the lack of work ethic for Paxton Lynch. Things may not work out. That is pretty much the epitome of my number 4 player, and that is Tyree Jackson, 6'7", 245-pound quarterback out of Buffalo. So far this season, 1,500 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 picks. He also has 58 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, when you look at someone like Tyree Jackson, first thing that screams off the board is arm talent. He might have the strongest arm in the draft, maybe. Now you don't want to pigeonhole him. You don't want to say when you look at him, oh, he's the next Cam Newton, or oh, he's the next this and that. I wouldn't say he's that big of a scrambler. Everyone likes to think when you see a black quarterback that they're going to be Michael Vick, or they're just the fastest. Think more Jameis Winston. You look at Tyree Jackson's play in terms of a scrambling ability. Yeah, he's athletic, but he's not, a dual threat quarterback by any means. He's a guy that I think can develop as a pocket passer and really, really, even though he's built like Cam Newton, 6'5", 6'7", not 6'5". Geez, what are we trying to downgrade his Tinder profile over here? 6'7", 245 pounds. That's just that. You see that and you're just like, if you have a lot of confidence in your QB coach. If you have a lot of confidence, your offensive coordinator, your head coach, whoever is going to be responsible for developing this player, I might even take him over the guys I have at 3 and 2 just from that upside alone, the untapped potential. But again, comes down to level of competition. Obviously, Buffalo's not beating a lot of big-name teams. Comes down to the fact that he is one of the best wide receivers in college going up against said weak competition in Anthony Johnson, who's a really, really nice wide receiver from Buffalo that we will talk about, I'm sure, when we start doing the wide receiver rankings. But when I look at upside, I don't think there's more upside than any player in this draft than Tyree Jackson at that quarterback spot, just because it's the most important position. He has certain things that you just can't teach with size and arm strength. And, you know, I would honestly say if I'm trying to compare him, I might have taken Tyree Jackson over, say, someone like Josh Allen last year out of Wyoming, where I'm a fan of Josh Allen. I know a lot of people think he's a bust because of his really bad low accuracy numbers in college and stuff like that. I was more so looking at, you know, his comparison to Carson Wentz. I'm like, I'm seeing something there, man. We've already seen Josh Allen do a lot more good than bad in his brief time as a starter for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm going to be honest, Buffalo Bills have absolutely nothing at skill positions outside of LaShawn McCoy, who's aging. But I would say right now, if you said right C4, you got Tyree Jackson, you got Josh Allen. Who are you taking? I might be more inclined to take Tyree Jackson. So that's just kind of how I rate him. I think he could very well challenge to be the 4th quarterback taken in the 1st round. I more so think he will be I don't want to outright just say he can't be a 1st-round talent, but I feel like he might be in that Mason Rudolph kind of range where when he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think there's a lot of upside with Tyree Jackson. I look forward to seeing how he finishes out the season and looking at a lot more tape on him. Going to QB number 3, it is going to be Ryan Finley, 6'4", 205 pounds, out of NC State. So far this season, 1,600 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Now, every time I talk about this, I guarantee through this entire process, until Bill Belichick comes out and says they're not getting a quarterback, I'm going to probably have Ryan Finley going to the Patriots just because he looks like the definition of a New England Patriot quarterback. He looks like the guy that would be the offspring of Tom Brady. Tom Brady's old enough that Ryan Finley probably could be his son. So I just look at Ryan Finley. I see a guy with good mechanics, good NFL size, athletic ability, But when I look at the more refined features, like things that we're kind of holding against Will Grier, the lack of pocket mechanics, the lack of just that final thing that rookie quarterbacks that don't make it in the NFL usually never are able to overcome or never able to define and grow into. Those little features, like I said, footwork, understanding just being a smart football player, not just being a system quarterback. I see all those traits in Ryan Finley. So I think minus the athletic ability, he might not have the highest upside out of the top 5 quarterbacks. Maybe he might have the lowest upside out of the top 5 quarterbacks. But I think from a safety perspective, I'd probably have him at number 2, which is why ultimately he's at number 3. He could very well be my number 2 quarterback too, depending on how they finish out with NC State. But right now, NC State's undefeated, and Ryan Finley is a massive part of that. They have some good wide receivers there. I mean, they might be able to make a run. I think this week of me recording this, they're taking on Clemson. That's going to be an awesome game. We're going to find out a lot more about him. And I'm going to say right now, I'm not one that likes to hold a lot of stock on one game. And then the only one game I usually put a lot of stock on these quarterbacks would be a good Senior Bowl. But if Ryan Finley can get the job done versus Clemson, he might be able to go to number 2 on this list. The only kind of downside I have against Finley is I definitely would say he's going to be more of a safe quarterback than he is a guy that could become a future MVP or something like that. I see him, kind of like Jarrett Stidham in that role where, he will take the easier pass more often than not. And, some people look for that. Some people like the Patriots. How many times the Patriots just dump it down to a running back or just throw it across the field on a slant to Gronk or a guy like Julian Edelman? That's why I think he's just a perfect fit for what they're doing up there in New England. And they need a quarterback. They need a backup for Brady. They need a successor for Brady. I think Finley could be that. Go to QB number 2. It's Drew Lock, 6'4", 225 pounds, out of Missouri. Now, a lot of this is still based off of his work last year, whereas this year he's been underwhelming. So far this season, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 picks. He also has 49 rushing yards for 3 touchdowns, whereas last year he threw for 44 touchdowns in the SEC. Now, yes, C4 does have a little SEC bias to him, but anytime you can do that against the best, even if you think the SEC is overrated, you have to admit almost all of the good defensive talent. Most of the defensive talent in the draft that ends up panning out is from the SEC. The best defenses are in the SEC. You go for 44 touchdowns in the SEC, you can't ignore that. And when you look at Drew Lock, he has the arm talent, he has the production, he has the upside, he has the NFL size, 6'4", 225. There's, just watching him, it's just, brain farts, man. It's brain farts. That's the, the kind of a child way to explain it. But it's just sometimes like, why did you make that throw? Why did that throw just happen when you could have done any other thing? You decide to throw that because Mizzou has some weapons. They have Albert O at tight end, might be one of the best tight ends in college. They have Emmanuel Hall, who's being talked about as a potential first-round talent at wide receiver. So there's weapons there. The offensive line's not bad. So he has weapons to be able to produce. This year, it's not working out. And I've watched only 2 Mizzou games, so maybe when I watch more tape, I can have a better definition of Drew Lock. But I saw a lot of what he did last year, and even then, sometimes it's just like, why did you throw that ball? Why did you have that small mental error that will get you benched in the NFL? Like, it's one of those things where some players can grow out of it. We said something like that with Sam Darnold coming into USC, and I think right now the Jets are pretty happy with that selection. So, I think that there's a chance. If I had to look at any player within the top 5 that has a chance of slipping between now and when I do my final rankings, it would be Drew Lock. But also, if he can, get back into what he was able to do in the 2017 season, he could firmly cement himself as the second best quarterback. So much like Ryan Finley, I think Drew Lock should go in the first round, depending on where the value of quarterbacks come from for this draft. But I think he's going to be a lock for the first round right now. Pun. Going to the number 1 quarterback, he's been my number 1. While a lot of people had him not even ranked as like a top 5 quarterback, I would like to say, he's one of those things like, oh man, I called Saquon Barkley. You know what I'm saying? He's like, oh really? You called the best player? I called Justin Herbert before a lot of people were saying he was the best quarterback. I've been with him. I've been riding or dying with him. Justin Herbert, number 1 QB for 2019 for C4. 6'5" to 6'6", depending on what site we're looking at. 220, 230 in that range from Oregon so far this season. 1,600 passing yards, 17 touchdowns to 5 picks. Also has 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. Herbert's the real deal, man. He has the size. He's a great athlete. He's literally my best combination for him is Marcus Mariota meets Jared Goff. If you took Mariota's athletic ability, maybe not straight line speed, but athletic ability. There's a difference between being a sprinter and being a guy that can just make guys miss, knowing when to run from the pocket, and you put that with the mechanics that Jared Goff had at Cal for the ultimate Pac-12 quarterback. That's what I'm seeing right now in Justin Herbert. I'm seeing a guy that, has arm talent. He still struggles a little bit with footwork, pocket awareness, which is common for about 90%, it feels like, of really talented quarterbacks that are making the jump from college to the pros. But those are all correctable. Those are all go to a place, QB, not even have to be a QB-friendly system, just with a QB-friendly quarterback coach, a guy that's not dog shit. We've already seen the strength of that happen in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz and Frank DiFilippo and Frank Reich developing and helping take his game to the next level. So as long as he doesn't go to a dog shit team with bad coaches, they'll be able to correct that. And then from that, you are working with a phenomenal base. We've seen him have some clutch victories for Oregon. We saw him have an overtime victory against who were they beat? I can't remember last week. They beat someone in overtime. They went to overtime against Stanford, which, I can't believe they lost that game, but it wasn't Herbert's fault. He was making all the plays in the books. He can make short throws, eat immediate throws, has a big arm. He's as good of a quarterback prospect as I've seen. I want to think, because I liked so many quarterbacks last year, mostly Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield, where would I put Justin Herbert? I honestly put him right in that conversation. I would have to put all 3 of them side by side, knowing my scheme, knowing my system, and have them run against each other to make that decision of where I'm ranking them 1, 2, and 3. So I think Justin Herbert absolutely is a top 5 talent. Will he go to the Giants? I would be annoyed if the Giants get 2 of my favorite college players from the last 5 years in Justin Herbert and Saquon Barkley, as obviously a Philadelphia Eagle fan. But it'd be a big gift for them, man. I don't see any way that Justin Herbert does not end up or deserve to be the number 1 quarterback in this year's draft class, and the number 1 quarterback, more importantly, the number 1 quarterback in my ranking. So there you go, guys. Those are your top 10 quarterbacks as of the midway point for the college football season, based off of my opinion. If you guys want to see the running back video, not next week, if you want to see it at some point this week, let me know in the comments. Maybe we can hit like 300-400 likes on this video. That'd be kind of cool. If it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.